right, everyone, welcome back to International Soccer Break. We have to do this rain or shine, and today is a day of rain. And we will start it off. I got the same two U.S. soccer fans, Rahi and Roy. I have to unfortunately put this on the board, but we'll briefly talk about yesterday's match, and then I'm going to move forward and kind of move to a more uplifting future. But why don't we start off, Rahi? What was your take on the match?
Yeah, I think I'm equal parts proud and disappointed at the same time. This game, we didn't play well. We, at times, were the protagonists in this game, which is interesting and impressive in its own way. But they were the better team. They were more clinical. They finished their chances. The goal that they had, that first goal, was really a beautiful move. They moved the ball really well in midfield when they needed to, and they gave us the space and the time to be on the ball. That being said, even though they were the better team and they took their chances, the truth is we had a couple of chances that could have changed the game. Christian Pulisic in the second minute had a breakaway. He thought he was offside. That could have changed the game. We created enough chances to score more goals and to be competitive in this game. The difference is we were suddenly weak in the back, which we hadn't been the entire tournament. And in the end, it's really disappointing because a World Cup comes every 4 years, and you want to take advantage of these opportunities. But there's really a lot to be optimistic about, and we can get to that in a second. But it's just sad because this is an opportunity we could have, if things had gone our way, won this game. And most importantly, if our players had performed to their best. And so, unfortunately, it was the opposite. A lot of the same players who brought us this far and who were very good underperformed a little bit in this game. You ride with the people who brought you here. And Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, Anthony Robinson didn't have good games.
Yeah, I'm feeling very, very sad today. Yesterday, it was annoyance and anger after the game. Annoyance that we made the mistakes we did. If you watch all three of Netherlands' goals, it was child's play. It was like shooting practice. It was the U.S. defense saying, "Hey, Memphis Depay, take a shot. We'll give you 10 yards of space. Just let's see where you could place it." And it was the same for all three goals. It was very sad to see us just completely fall apart defensively in the game that mattered most. And it was shocking because we didn't see any of that in the first three games. First three games, we looked wonderful defensively. That was our strength. But in the last game, it was shooting practice for the Netherlands. And it was incredibly frustrating. But I'm going to say we're like a batch of cookies taking out of the oven a little bit too early. Okay, we look soft, delicious. I mean, with cookies, you look soft, delicious, ready for prime time. But when you take a bite, it's raw. And that's what happened against the Netherlands. The Netherlands took a big bite and exposed us, made us look like kids, made us look like the inexperienced team that we are.
Louis van Gaal, basically the Dutch coach, sounded like he studied our team very in depth. But how much do you think, because we've all played in the American system, right? Like we grew up playing in the soccer system, obviously not at a professional level, but we've had these coaching and this kind of stuff. In this particular match, it felt like to me, aside from the fact that the players obviously made mistakes on the goals, it just seemed like they weren't told beforehand, like, here's where the threats are going to come from. So from a tactical perspective, do we think that the coaching in general is a little bit lacking from the US perspective? And is that sort of the way our mindset, almost like culturally, where we're thinking like, okay, we're going to play our game without going sort of incisively into like tactically preparing for another team? In this case, I thought they were underprepared for this particular team. I thought so.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that they were underprepared for this game, that tactically the Dutch won this game, and that there's no doubt that our manager, Greg Berhalter, was outcoached. That's for sure. But I think that's also a bit overblown today, or yesterday's game, because I think that Greg Berhalter has done a great job of cultivating a program and this vibe around the team and getting these young players to get the best out of these young players and getting them more comfortable on the ball. The problem was yesterday, I think he made a calculation that, look, we can either play an open game and take our chances and see what happens and man for man see how we do, or we can basically retreat a little bit and be more closed off. Instead, he went with the first option to play a little bit more open, to press up high. And unfortunately, our individual players couldn't do what they needed to do in those, like they couldn't beat the man in front of them, and we were outmatched. Now, as far as coaching in the US, you're talking about, yes, I think that we are arriving at this point, especially with this team, that we need, for example, an international coach. We need a few different ideas. We need to think more about each game and strategize for each game. But I don't think that was the problem in this case. And the reason, just quickly, I'll compare this to Australia, Argentina. Two games played on the same day. Both we could put us and Australia in a similar category. We're both playing opponents that are better than us. Australia sat back, counterattacked, and had a similar game to the one we played in terms of result. Very close in the end, and Argentina won. The difference is, for our development, I think it was important to play the game the way that we did. To say, look, we're going to try and play you, because eventually we can play a team like the Netherlands. Australia is not in that position, and in many ways they played a better tactical game and they were smarter. But I think for us, we had to play this way. I don't mind us playing this way because eventually we'll be able to beat a team like this playing this way.
I agree a lot with what Rocky said, but the game yesterday, we lost, in my opinion, because of individual mistakes, naive players, mistake-prone players that weren't up to the occasion. The occasion was too big for them. I think it's the youngest group in the World Cup. Let's keep that in mind. That's number one. And that's one very exciting thing for us moving forward to the next World Cup. We were the youngest, the most inexperienced, and it finally showed. It didn't really show too much in the first three games. Oh man, was it obvious in this last one. So for me, that's what lost us the game. Tactically speaking, it's the same metaphor with the cookies. Berhalter is an inexperienced coach. Berhalter is raw. I think he did a great job given his experience level, given where he came from, given the expectations. He won us Nations League, he won us Gold Cup. He recruited exceptional dual nationals. He got us out of the group stage. He played very beautiful soccer in the first three games, at least the first halves of those first three games. He got us playing attacking soccer for like the first time in our history in World Cups. Props to him, but he was outclassed. He was outcoached, just like our players were in this final game. So moving forward, I agree with Rocky. I think we're going to have to move past Berhalter. He did a good job. He got us to where we are. It was good. Thumbs up. Gets a solid B-. And we're going to have to get ourselves a very experienced coach, someone who is above the level of the players.
Moving forward, let's not talk about the number 9 because we everyone knows that that's something that they need.
Yeah.
But so aside from that, what do you think this team? Obviously, Tim Ream, that's it for him. He's retiring, from international, the international game. So what do you think is needed? Let's just go back to front as we move forward. So let's start with the back and then move forward.
I mean, I think we need a ball-playing center back. So Tim Ream was great for us this tournament because his passing is amazing. But he's old. He's not a great one-on-one defender. There are some young guys, certainly, who won at this World Cup who are injured. Chris Richards in particular, who can pass the ball and are good defenders. But that's what we need. We need someone who gives us both. Roy, as you move forward, who comes next then?
So for me, it's less about individual players and it's more about the players we have now. Keep in mind, we have the youngest group in the World Cup. What we need now is linear progression for these players. We need these players to continue to improve. If these players improve at the rate they have in the past 3 years, we're going to have ourselves a hell of a team in 2026. So if we get linear progression from every single player, we're going to have a hell of a core. We have a lot of interesting young players coming up the pipeline, and it's about getting it right with at least a few of them to fill out that rest of the roster because we have the core now. We have the core. If they stick together and continue to improve, we're going to have a tremendous team in 2026.
Yeah, I think there's two things. I agree with you completely. I think this particular core group is going to be pretty nasty in like a few years. How do we get to play teams like the Netherlands and Germany and all these like solid teams more often? One. Yeah. And the second part of it is how do we get the players to sub in for these guys? Because after this first group is going to be phenomenal. I'm not worried about this group at all. But how do we get where the drop off in the 60th, 70th minute when someone gets injured or someone needs to come in? How do we get that second guy to be like 95, 90% of what the first guy is? So those are the two questions I think we'll end with.
Yeah, I think it's happening. So it's a very good point that we said going this tournament, our biggest weakness is where we don't have anyone that could finish goals and we don't have depth. So you're right. We need depth, but there's a good I don't think of this as a golden generation. This is a golden pipeline. There's a ton of young players
Mhm.
coming through who are good, who are going to move to Europe, who are going to push these guys to be better. So even if we don't get linear progression from all of these guys, we just need linear progression from some of them. Now, in terms of how we're going to play European countries or South American countries that are good, the first step is getting into Copa America, which is in a couple of years. Hopefully, we get into that tournament would be helpful. It's really on the players. So MLS development, yes, but also MLS allowing these players to go to Europe early because the players have to be put in situations in their clubs where they are playing against these guys on a daily basis because we don't have the luxury. And that's up to US soccer. Can we schedule enough games? Can we schedule enough friendlies? Can we find competitions that are high stakes? And we have to do that. But beyond that, because of the region we're in, it's up to our players to go to clubs where they are fighting day in and day out against these Dutch players that we've seen. I mean, and they will. Like Frankie De Jong, look at Yunus Musa in 2 years. Let's talk about Yunus Musa in 2, 3 years and compare him to Frankie De Jong. I'd love to have that conversation in a couple years and see where he is.
Yeah, I feel good about depth. I don't feel good about the fact we're not going to have a qualifying cycle. I also don't trust right now U.S. soccer to get it right with things like Copa America. We need to be in Copa America. The fact that the only team being talked about as an invited team is Canada, that is extremely concerning. We need to be in that tournament, and we need to hire whoever planned games for Qatar this time around. Sure, Qatar was absolutely terrible in World Cup, but Qatar was in the Gold Cup. Qatar was in Copa America. Qatar played every tournament that they could leading up to the World Cup in order to prepare. If we're unable to get quality matches that matter leading up to the World Cup, we're going to be unprepared. And we're going to have a group of guys that are playing the first high profile matches that matter in a long time at the next World Cup. And that's going to fall on Major League Soccer. Send players at the right time. They're doing it. They're not like Liga MX that holds on to players forever and ruins their progression. We're sending players at the right time so far. Let's continue in that direction. And we're going to start producing some magical players.
All right. Well, look, it was a fun tournament. I'm glad you guys came on and enjoyed your inside. Go USA. Enjoy the rest of the World Cup. I know Rahi, you're off to Qatar, so have fun out there and see you guys.
See you guys.